have you heard? Or what have you experienced?
I've experienced fearful looks of people around me thinking that I'm going to be an angry Black woman just by walking past someone. I've experienced that before.
Who else? Who else has heard of the stereotype?
So I think, like, from the lens of gender, I think women, when they have a powerful voice or they speak their mind, men and other genders are like, oh, they're scary, or they're things like that, when they're just being powerful and amazing. So I think within the lens of race, it can also be othering people and lead to miscommunication or things that aren't so fun, like racism, structural racism, things like that.
Very good. Anyone else? In the neon green, I saw that you raised your hand
very gently. I just think that it's something well known in a lot of minority women. So I just think it's a common thing to hear that isn't always necessarily true. It's just a representation, I guess, of what's been spread.
I think I'll piggyback on that a little bit. I think the general psyche of like American society is that like if you're not skinny, white, blonde, proper, prim, like then it becomes like this otherism. And so like there's like certain groups, like I'm Polynesian, we're very loud people, very like stuff like that. That gets perceived as not normal to that that hierarchical idea, and I think that's where the stereotype of the angry Black woman comes from. Just it's not, it doesn't fit that.
The paradigm.
Yes.
Very good. But it's very much, like you said, dehumanizing. We're not allowed to feel. We're not allowed to react. For example, the shooting yesterday in Nashville that took the lives of children. We're not allowed to react to that social injustice because we're angry bitches when we come out against these weapons that we allow on our streets, assault rifles. And the purpose of this is to silence women, Black women, women of color, women in general. And although we cannot be summed up by one emotion such as anger, we do have a right to express emotions, and we need to break with that narrative. And Dr. Maria Corley put it best when she wrote, "I am not an angry Black woman, but what if I were?" Thank you.
This is Abeni Merriweather. She is a senior commercial music major in UTEP's Department of Music, and she's going to introduce her pianist colleague and talk a little bit about the stereotype in the song.
Hello, my name is Abeni, and this is my collaborative pianist, Flor Garza. And this piece, I'm Not an Angry Black Woman by Dr. Corley here.
Just go through.
It means a lot to me as not only just being a Black woman, but especially more so when it's set to music as a Black musician, as a Black singer, and someone that is also very heavily involved in social advocacy in regards to my own race and what I experience as a Black woman. I am not an angry Black woman is a phrase that I've said a lot from even before getting into high school. When I was younger, in middle school, even before that, in elementary school, when I was old enough to understand what racism was and what that meant to how it affects me, from that moment on, of constantly trying to defend myself, I'm not an angry Black woman for how I speak about the injustices that I face, that my people face. But what if I were? It's what it means in the angry Black woman stereotype is that, oh yeah, everyone has a right to feel that way, but you can't express it that way. You have to be proper. You can't really shout, get out of order, get out of line. People try to force us to express ourselves and express our anger and our hurt and our frustration in a certain way that doesn't align with how we should be able to react. Anger is a valid emotion, especially with all the years and decades and centuries of injustice that we face. So, I am not an angry black woman. No, my anger does not define me. It's simply how I feel. Because how can anyone not feel that? But what if I would? What if I would? I'm not an angry black woman. I am not an angry black woman. I am not an angry black woman.
Everyone, this is the composer of what you just heard and the librettist, Dr. Maria Thompson Corley.
So actually,
a lot of what I think about this text and this song has kind of already been said. But I'll just tell you what caused me to write the poem, which wasn't originally written to be set to music. And the original structure of the poem was, I'm not an angry black woman, I am, you know, a live butterfly impaled by a pin. I'm not an angry black woman, I am. However, when I decided to set it to music, I felt like it was stronger to just have that declarative statement and then what I am, and then, you know, what I'm claiming for myself. But I think it was around, I remember specifically, you know, Serena Williams and, you know, the US Open, and feeling that she'd gotten some unfair calls, which I'm a tennis fan and I've seen Serena get a lot of bad calls. So, you know, she was like, something was bubbling over there that was, I don't think, based on just one thing. And there were some other incidences where, you know, people were coming down really hard on black women who were publicly angry. And, you know, I mean, I think that this is sort of a deliberate thing, because there are a lot of things that are done deliberately, in the sense of, you know, like the word woke, people saying they're woke, and then people weaponize it and try to strip it of its original meaning and try to make it a bad thing. So, you know, out of injustice and all these things, then, you know, to try to make people afraid of defining who they are or saying anything. And that's what it really is like, you know, trying to put everything into the same category of just whining or something, or, you know, not wanting to see the root causes of why people continue to be upset. And that's the thing about it. It's like, okay, you guys are just always angry. What are you guys doing to change the situation that we're angry about, really, other than trying to get us to shut up and do things to make it harder to make change? You know, whether it's disenfranchisement or whether they're insidious things that go on. You know, people complain, and so you put another factory next to where they live so that more people get sick and die, and, you know, and then try to gaslight, you know, or just ignore. So anyway, it was, you know, during Black Lives Matter, and I was just kind of, I had discovered poetry as a cathartic thing a few years prior, having not written any since I was in middle school maybe. So yeah, that was the genesis of that poem, and I tried to think of images that were painful, because that's what anger comes from, right? You're hurt, or you're afraid. And I think a lot of the anger that we see in certain quarters is more fear, and fear based on irrational things that, you know, again, this othering and not doing the research to find out what is really true, but just accepting things that give you more fuel for your fire of, you know, being angry, as opposed to really examining, are you being told the truth? What is the truth? Do I have reason to really be angry? I may be still afraid because, and I think some of the fear comes from, well, what if these people have an opportunity to do to me what has been done to them? Which doesn't tend to happen, strangely enough. I mean, every once in a while, you know, I mean, and those stories are scary too, to prevent more fear. But I don't know, it's the sort of thing that you become incredibly frustrated, and, you know, you see yourself just trying to live, just trying to exist. You're a butterfly, right? You have your beauty, you're trying to just do your thing, and someone is trying to impale you and keep you from flying. You know, the Olympic swimmer, I used to swim, not at the Olympic level, but maybe that's why that came to me. But not only are you tethered so that you're unable to swim as fast and as far as you really could because you have this level of skill, but, you know, you're dragging this legacy behind you, this slave ship. And, you know, I mean, enslavement obviously is something that is humans do to other humans. Humans do so much crap to other humans, you know, regardless of the reason, color, you know, women aren't always great to other women. I mean, the power dynamics, the money, greed, all these things that factor into the horrible ways that humans treat each other. But, you know, it's that idea that was thought up of justifying the enslavement. And that's one of the things that we drag around. It's like people who think that there was a legitimate reason, and they may not articulate it, but the idea that, well, these people really are lesser. I mean, let's just be real, they're lesser. You know, they're not as good as we are. And so, you know, of course, they were, you know, going to be enslaved. And this was something that was consciously thought up to keep indentured servants, who when they came over, they were black and white indentured servants, and people would earn their way out of indentured servitude. But they needed to find a way for people, and they continue to do it, people within whatever class is, right? But, you know, you have diverse groups who are in the same group of class, financial class, and you find ways to separate them. And one of the ways that they came up with is these people look this way, you know, being dark in so many cultures, you know, Asian cultures, all various Asian cultures, whether it's India, you know, it's escaping me. They're not, untouchable is not something that you use, but I can't remember, it begins with a D. Anyway, there are these caste systems, and they are all over. And so people who are black, people who are brown have been assigned a caste. Women have been assigned a caste. And, you know, these injustices, they hurt. And so when you're hurt, sometimes you become angry. And I want to add that, you know, being consumed by your anger, it consumes you. So I justify the anger. I don't think that anybody, it's wise to live in a state where you're constantly angry. I don't think that is helpful. And it doesn't really affect the people who are upset as much as who upset you as much as it affects you, whether it's your health, your blood pressure goes up, all these things that happen, all these trauma-related things that happen. So anyway, that was, the middle section was just framing it in, you know, the trauma and the hurt. And, you know, and then, as I said, the ending, just claiming the idea that this isn't all that there is to me. You can't sum me up in one word. But if I am angry on occasion, or even if every day I find something that upsets me, I mean, that's actually kind of reasonable. I mean, it's good to shut some of it out, but there's so much. There's so much, and I think that in telling people that they should just, you know, accept it, that negates the power that people would have if they just chose not to accept some of these things, and so many things. So, anyway, and so musically speaking, that sort of primal scream at the beginning, that's what it is, you know, it's like a primal scream, and a lot of dissonance because, you know, it's not meant to be a comforting song, it's meant to be an in-your-face experience. With the middle, is more still hints of what happened before, musically speaking, but more calm as she says what she is. I'm defining what it is that, you know, I'm saying about myself. So, yeah, I guess that's all I need to say about that. Does anybody have any questions?
I was actually reading an article in preparation, and it's an NPR article, Anger, the Black Woman's Superpower. And it talks about Serena Williams and how it's not okay for her to be angry after a match, but it's okay for her white male counterpart to break a racket or three rackets, whether he wins or loses. That expression's okay. And so we have to look at the racial divide there. We have to look at the gender divide there. It's really important to point that out. So it's an NPR, Anger, the Black Woman's Superpower.
You called it a primal scream, right? Like the. Could you talk about maybe the genesis, like how you got to think about that musical texture, or if that's been done previously in like another, like a musical theater or classical music, or or was that something that just came out like from your process?
I mean, it probably has been done. I think it's a very dramatic beginning, and not the easiest thing for a singer to do, to go from like covered 2 octaves at the beginning of a song. But I think it's an attention getter, But yeah, I can't say that I was thinking of a particular other piece that does that. And if someone finds one, let me know. I'm sure there is one somewhere. But yeah, it was just really that thought of just reaching the end of your rope and
Yeah, that was a very like salient, like awesome part of the piece.
Thanks.
This is so random, but just kind of going along with that. I love that you kind of came up with that primal scream originally, like the way you said it. So, like you didn't like oh, this came, like I got the idea from this song or anything like that. You were just like, oh, this song should start with a 2-octave lead. That's dope. It's so interesting to me because I don't know, I'm gonna just carefully step into what I'm gonna talk about, but like in all of my life, 25 years I've lived everywhere, I've never met a people as so vocally willing and able to stand up for themselves in the way that Black people have, just like, that's just like, Black people are very good at standing up for themselves and speaking their minds and speaking their truth and all that stuff. It is a shame how that gets perceived as being angry. And yeah, just.
Well, I mean, I think some of us are and some of us aren't, and I think it depends on the spaces that we're in, and I think people need, because I know there are a lot of places where, even like, look at things that should be trivial, like, hair. Just being able to express in a way that maybe would be natural to you, but is it accepted? And so I think Black people have gone through a lot to get to a place where you can perceive that. I mean, the consequences of speaking up, if you think of the martyrs, who were trying to even just register people to vote and got murdered, or even you could get killed for just doing well on your own, doing your thing, earning your money in your little segregated place, and people looking at it and saying, oh, they're doing a little bit too well, let's just raise this place to the ground or take it away, So I think it is a matter of, on one hand, you can feel that, the fear of survival. It's like, if I can go along to get along, then maybe I can make it, my family will survive. And then the other side is like survival in the sense of real survival, where you are not just surviving, but being able to thrive and being able to actually feel like you're living and not just wondering, okay, am I following all of their rules, the way that will allow me to, do okay for myself, or do I have to dial this back or dial that back? Can I wear, when people started wearing afros, that was a big thing. That was a big deal, and a lot of people were maybe thinking, wow, you rabble rousers, you're wearing afros, you got the shikis on, what are you doing? Get your either your wig or start all these other things that maybe I don't know. I mean, I think that when your back is against the wall, and people seem to be continually trying to put back against the wall, even if you start to walk away from the wall, then I don't know, it can inspire you to sort of speak up, I hope, But it's not always, I don't think it's universally easy for people to speak and to feel that it's safe to do so and not to worry about the consequences of speech and to know that people will have their back or whatever, I think there's some of that as well, but
I identified with that primal scream as I listened to it in previous weeks, thinking about our event in the opera. And yesterday kind of came to a culmination, after I was receiving all these alerts about the 3 women that were shot, and I want to say teachers, if I'm not mistaken.
I didn't even hear about that. I guess
In
it
Nashville.
was yesterday. I mean, not really paying attention to the news. You said
In
that.
Nashville, and I felt that inside, that primal scream, but you can't let it out. And I was in a classroom full of children because I went to go deliver cupcakes to an elementary. And I was looking at their little faces right after that happened. And you feel that internal primal scream, but you have to hold it in. And so I was holding it in all day. I held it in at the opera, standing up there introducing women's studies, and I finally let it out at night when I was watching the news, and my little boy, 7 years old, is asking me, why are there tears coming down my face? And I really wish that I could have let out the primal scream at that time. And I could really, really identify with that first part of the song, and we're not always allowed to express that. It's unprofessional. We're not supposed to be that way. Mexicans are supposed to be docile. Latinas are supposed to be doormats. Think of all the stereotypes that work against us, men and women, every day of our lives. We're not supposed to let out that kind of scream when someone harms our Black brothers and sisters. First of all, because we're not supposed to be united, but second of all, because that's not supposed to be your reaction.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, men and women. I mean, obviously, I'm writing for the point of view of a woman, obviously, but I mean, I think that there are aspects. Somebody asked me after they heard the person online you probably saw is Rayanne Bryce Davis sing the song, and so I went to a performance that she did live, and the guy who's a singer said, well, if you ever write I'm Not an Angry Black Man, let me know and send it to me, which I don't know that I would feel qualified to speak for men, but I mean, the trauma impacts and the expectations of how you're supposed to behave and whether or not you were allowed to fully experience your feelings. I mean, certainly that's not something that is confined to women. That's something that I'm starting to examine with men, and these sorts of things of allowing humans the full spectrum of their humanity can only help all of humanity. So men having the full ability to embrace their feelings, women having the full ability to embrace their feelings, and not gendering certain feelings, certain things. Like, it was I love Roy Wood Jr. He had this something about that, and just the idea that whatever, like men are allowed to be angry. That idea, men are not allowed to be sad or vulnerable, and everybody should be allowed to be every human emotion, because they all spring from our humanity and they have to be trained out of us. So I'm not, again, if I find a wonderful poem and that is about the male experience and someone thinks it's okay for me to write a song, then maybe I will. But yeah.
I have a comment or question.
Sure.
Yeah, in my preparation for the music, I noticed in the middle section, the slower more when she described herself, the piano part is I don't know if you meant it like that, but to me it's like very choral, like it has like a soprano line and it's like accompanied by a very clear alto, tenor, bass chords.
Yeah.
So to be seen, or maybe because I'm very involved with singers and choirs, so I felt it like that. And to me, since it seemed choral, to me it was like voices supporting what she's saying. And then there's a brief interruption of that, and then that slow theme appears again, and it's like an imitation, some kind of counterpoint. It seems to me like soprano and alto and tenor bass counterpoint, and to me it sounded like the men joined in. So
Yeah.
and I just wanted to make that comment. I don't know if it was intentional or not, but at that moment I feel like many people joined in the cry or in the
Yeah.
in the sense.
It's like the surrounding society or the group that's looking at.
Yeah, and that part is like different, independent from to what she's singing. So it's like a different identity, but they're put together.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what's interesting about having other people experience your music.
Yes.
Because actually, when you talk about it that way, yeah, I can see what you're saying. I mean, that wasn't necessarily the intention, but I like that.
Oh,
I do. I like it. Yeah. Yes.
So in my preparation for having to sing it, I thought a lot about, what exactly is like happening and how do I interpret this? And one question I had is, what was not the perspective, but when you were writing these words, who were you saying them to? Is it something that, saying I am not an angry black woman, but saying it to yourself, like in like privacy, and to be that, like where in the moments where you feel like the most vulnerable, like in your own like room, in your own home, or saying I am not an angry black woman to someone who is like trying to say that you are, and maybe that's why like how the beginning starts off is like very loud, like forte exclamation of that, or is it like something where you're just like at home and you let it go, or is it kind of one of those things where it can be interpreted in multiple ways in terms of?
I mean, I like the idea that people put something out there and people can personalize it in whatever way that they like. If you want my specific, I guess I was sort of speaking for a collective, like so there were a number of women, black women who I saw who were being portrayed in that way or being denigrated for showing public anger. And so it was partially speaking to the greater public, and it was partially thinking of not just me personally, but other black women, and that every black woman should be empowered to be angry if she, and again, I mean, there are certain things that are, destructive in the sense of like, I'm angry, so I'm going to set fire to your house. Well, no, I'm not advocating that at all. I'm just saying, to have the emotion is one thing, and I'm not, there are lots of things that doesn't necessarily lead to or justify. But to have to hold it in all the time, no. And so, yeah, I am speaking to whoever. Yeah.
Also the piano accompaniment. I feel like it's all very poetic the way it is, like the way thinking about it musically speaking. Because at first, like when I saw the piece, like just I glanced at it when I first got it, I thought it was like one of like the modern, like day, contemporary, like atonal music that we're all used to like seeing with modern composers of this day. But as I was looking at the music and really analyzing the vocal line, but also the piano part, I was like, oh, I see the actual like motives, the melody, and especially in the piano part where it's like the da-da-da-da-da, and how it's interpolated throughout the B section, and it comes back at the end. And I feel that's very poetic in the sense of it's more than what meets the eye. And, because someone could easily just look and go like, oh, it's like an atonal piece of music, or they just hear it's like, oh, there's like no melody, there's no like harmonic structure, but there is. You just have to really be willing to listen. And I feel like that coincides with the text a lot. You just have to be willing to listen.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to listen.
If I have an idea, like a motive, as we call it, I try to maybe transform it. It's something called thematic transformation. So, yeah, the piano thing changing in the middle, it's the same, but it's different, exploring a different aspect of those notes. But, I mean, it just didn't seem to call for something that was really tonal and pretty. So, yeah. But if you come to the opera tonight, it sounds actually quite different than this music. quite different. So yeah, it's for children, and I'm not saying children can't respond to something that's edgier. I mean, they probably can, but that wasn't the direction I chose to go. So yeah, kind of a different musical language.
Do you want to tell us about the opera? Tell the audience.
Sure.
That was called a segue.
Dr. Corley and I very fortuitously met about, I think it was October 17th. It was my birthday present, actually. October 16th was my birthday. And I knew of you and wanted to meet you. And we have a mutual friend that lives in her hometown of Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And we were ships passing in the night just about. She was leaving with her, she had her family with her, and I was going to that seminar. She'd just come from that seminar, and she was on her way out. And I said, wait, do you? I knew she was a composer. I had heard her work. I'd heard my friend Gwendolyn Brown sing I Am Not an Angry Black Woman, and was struck by the poetry. Anyway, it's awesome. And I said, do you have an opera that might be suitable for undergraduate singers who are, when most people think of opera, they think of Puccini, and they think of Verdi, and they think of really big stuff with a big orchestra that's frankly unsuitable for 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds because they're younger. They've got a lot of maturing to do. So I asked her, she said, nope, but let's talk. And then this miracle happened. I gave her my card. And the miracle is that she followed up with me. I mean, I don't know how many times you've been to a conference or a meeting and you meet someone and you think, wow, I'd really like to connect with that person. And you both say, yes, let's do that. And then it never, ever happens. Not here. Within a week or two, I don't remember, she called me up or we texted, emailed, I don't recall. And then by December 9th, I had a new opera in my hands for my students. From October 23rd-ish, the germ was born. So she is Wonder Woman in my opinion. The opera itself, it's called The Fox and the Cookie. It was based on 4 art songs. So an art song is kind of like what you just heard, a standalone vocal and piano work. And these 4 art songs that she wrote were designed for younger voices, written on Aesop's fairy tales, The Fox and the Grapes, The Fox and the Stork, and so forth. And she took those and metamorphosed, I don't know if that's a verb, into this 35-minute opera that we are performing tonight in the Fox Fine Arts Recital Hall. It is so charming, and the more we've worked on it, the more we have found the beautiful messages of kindness, of looking at the other as a person who was raised to be and do, behave in certain ways, and maybe with some kindness and maybe the promise of a sweet treat like a cookie, you could have a discussion that might lead to mutual understanding, or at least a different perspective. At least a different perspective. I as long as I'm standing here, something else came to mind. The title of today's session that we're all here for is Black Female Voices, in social movement. And so we've been talking about song and how that the voice very, specifically is expressed in song. And I think that's very wonderful for the metaphor of making your voice heard. So I'm pleased that all of you are enjoying the musical aspect of raising your voice and lifting your voice, lift every voice. And to that end, I also want to congratulate the singer you just heard, Abeni Merriweather, has just returned from New York City yesterday, maybe this morning, I don't know, yesterday, where one of her compositions, she is a published composer herself, one of her compositions, Lord, I Know I've Been Changed, which was performed at Carnegie Hall, y'all, by the America's High School of Arts and Florida. And with that, does anyone want to talk any more, ask some more questions about our topic today?
I'd like to applaud you for the cross collaboration because it's really interesting. Nothing does happen in isolation, and I just loved seeing all the different departments work and the different things that came along with it. And like you said, the raising your voice and what that means as a person versus musically. I love the cross collaboration. So congratulations. It's really fascinating, and also the different perspectives. And if you instruct art in one way, then your students then absorb it or experience that way, but to have all the different perspectives and thoughts and viewpoints is a beautiful way to bring it all together.
Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you, Dr. Corley. Thank you, Abeni. That was absolutely beautiful. Thank you, Professor Cherry Du. Please do attend the opera tonight. You will not be disappointed. My children were floored. They loved it, and you will love it too. With that said, have a good afternoon, and hopefully we will see you again soon for another collaboration between Women's Studies and the Opera Department and African American Studies. Thank you so much.